Welcome back, everybody. It's our third and final violation of expected utility. And I want you to think about this. When you say, I'm a risk-averse person or I'm a risk-seeking person, we usually make blanket statements around that. And after this video, I want you to question that and be careful on these blanket statements, because our other violation, or the third violation, is what we call risk domain specificity. So there's a good word to say. I don't know what your mother language is, but specificity, if you can say that in English, you're doing very, very well. And if you can spell it, specificity, then we're having a good day. So risk domain specificity means in different domains, we have different risk tolerances. So it's not just a one size fits all. So the first thing we think about, and we just talked about our risk tolerance in coin flips or in finance decisions. We've got different domains here. One is financial decisions. And as I've noted, depending on when I do it, what time of year maybe, my mood, my risk tolerance does have small variations. That's why I say it's sometimes 170, 180 to take this. And so even on different days, my risk tolerance changes. But then I know that I have to be very cognizant of my risk tolerance when it comes to long-term investing. Long-term investments, where I know that over time the market tends to go up, and so we have to just be patient and go through the bumps and continue to contribute to our retirement and move that in the right direction and not get all skittish investments. But then we also have gambling, sports betting, and what I find fascinating within these financial decisions is that people in general seem to have this really risk-seeking behavior in sports betting, where even the odds are stacked against them and they know it, I think, that they're still very risk-seeking. And these very same people, when we start talking about investments, they go, oh no, I don't want to do that. That sounds too risky, or I could lose money. And I go, whoa, we're talking about behavioral inconsistency. That's a classic example. And so I'm trying to be the smart investor where I've got more risk tolerance in the investment area, and my sports betting, I don't really have an appetite for that. And however, I do see the opposite, and it's inconsistent in a lot of different ways, where people are more risk-seeking in sports betting, where it should be the opposite. But that doesn't just stop at financial decisions. What about like health and safety? Health and safety. You could be a very conservative investor, and then also really take your health not seriously, or you're just like, I don't really care about my body, I don't really care about my safety, not wearing a seatbelt, not taking care of yourself. You can be inconsistent with financial decisions. Same thing with recreational activities. So if you go skydiving and you are a very conservative investor, you have different risk tolerances based on the domains. And there was one of the guys we talked to at JP Morgan, who manages high net worth individuals, said that he's got a multi-million-dollar client that wanted to retire early and wanted only safe bonds in their investment portfolio, didn't want to jump out to any risky stocks. And they wanted to do that so they could devote their entire life to jumping out of an airplane every day. So what a classic example of changes of risk domains and risk behavior for even individuals. And then finally, we've got social domains. You could be a really risky investor, but also very introverted, or the opposite, where you are totally okay with going out and meeting new people, talking and being very risk-seeking in that area. Don't care what people say. And then I'm very conservative in some of my other areas. And so you can already see, not only do we violate expected utility, we sometimes violate our own risk tolerances in different domains. I'm going to take this one step further and then I'll stop. But even think about, what about days of the week? Does your risk tolerance change on different days of the week? And I'm going to encourage you to, if you have cars or are out in traffic, notice people's riskiness of driving on a Friday afternoon. I'm filming this here on a late Friday morning. And I know that on Friday afternoon, when everyone's trying to get back from work or wherever, or school, their risk tolerance is way more risk-seeking. Many more cars fly through red lights, take more risk to try to get into traffic than they would on any other day. So even on days of the week, even within the same domain, we change. So it's very, very complicated. We're complicated people. But that's what makes behavioral finance so interesting, is to try to unpack that and to try to understand this not only about ourselves, about people around us as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. When we come back, we're going to finish out our last little module on what I believe is this first little section before we start our deep dive into prospect theory. Thanks for hanging in there, and we'll see you on the next video.